How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're Daf Mem Gimel, Daf 43 of Masechta Shevuos. Friends, friends. So, Chevre, okay, here is the Dilio. Okay, so today's going to be kind of like a freebie, I think, because I think it should be really quick. So we're on Mem Beis Amud Beis at the Mishnah, about 15, 20 lines, I'd say, from the bottom of Mem Beis Amud Beis. But my plan is, I'm only planning to get up to the Mishnah at the bottom towards the bottom of Mem Gimel Amud Aleph, which means that tomorrow we're going to finish Mem Gimel Amud Aleph, do Mem Gimel Amud Beis, Mem Dalet Amud Aleph, and Mem Dalet Amud Beis. But here's the thing, Chevra, there's a reason why I'm doing this. Because once we start the next Mishnah, there really isn't a good stopping point. And secondly, Mem Dalet Amud Aleph is really small, and Mem Dalet Amud Beis, I think we're just going to get up to the new Perek halfway through Mem Dalet Amud Beis. So, whatever, I think, and just otherwise, I don't know where we would stop, but we would be stopping in the smack in the middle. So, anyways, yeah, these pages are kind of weird. But Chevra, I think just Bekitzer, I think we'd probably appreciate a little break at this point. We've had some really intense. I say the last week. Let me look at the last week. And I think I did this in last recording as well. But in the last week, if I just look at the last 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So how many of the last 7 have been over an hour? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 out of the last 7 have been over an hour. One of them was 59 and a half minutes. I think we can consider that to be an hour. Basically, 5 out of the last 7 have been an hour plus. Kimat. One of them is 59 and a half minutes. So I think we'd all appreciate a little break. So here we go. Yeah, Shevuos. And tomorrow is going to be mamish straight out of Bava Metzia. Literally straight out of Bava Metzia tomorrow. So let's enjoy the lighter material. Okay, says the Mishnah on Daf Mem Beis Amud Beis, about 15, 20 lines from the bottom. The following items we do not swear about them. Ha'avodim, ve'ashtoris, ve'karkois, ve'hekdeshos, and hekdeshos. How is that? The avodim and documents and property and hekdeshes, things that you consecrated to the temple. So those things we don't swear about them. Ein boed tashlume kefel v'loy tashlume arba v'chamisha, and also there's no kefel if you steal them. There's no 4 times payments, 5 times payments for slaughtering and selling. Okay. Okay, I mean that's only by she and shor v'set. So, but anyways, shomer chinam eno nishba a shomer chinam. So if you have a custodian who's watching them for free, eno nishba will not swear if it gets lost or something. No sisocha eno mishalim, if it gets lost, then a gnev v'aveder shomer socha would normally pay, but he wouldn't pay in this case. Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon, Kodshim shechai b'achrayusa nishboin alein, v'shenachai b'achrusa nein nishboin alein. Okay, so there's a difference between a neder and a nidove when it comes to a korban. A neder is when you say, I'm going to bring this particular animal as a korban. If the animal gets lost, so you don't have to replace it. If you say, I'm going to bring a korban, so then if you set aside an animal and it gets lost and you have to replace it, you have to set aside a different one. So Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon Kodshim shechayiv b'achrayusan, Kodshim that if it gets lost you have to replace it, for example, right, like a nedava. So then it's considered mammon, because Reb Shimon would say davar agorim the mammon kimamon dami. If it gets lost, then you're going to have to bring a different one. It's going to cost you an investment. So to replace it. So therefore it's considered mammon, and therefore nishboin alein, you can swear on it because it's considered mammon. But if it's an animal that, if it's a neder, that if it gets lost, you don't have to replace it, so then you wouldn't have to swear about it I don't know if it gets like lost or something like that. Right, exactly. And then Rashi says, and then you after you like set aside the animal, you like give it to a custodian, etc. Reb Meir says, Reb Meir, we've seen this before. Yesh dvarim shehein bikarka, although we've seen it, I think, as kikarka. Ve'enon kikarka. There are things, you can have things that are attached to the ground, but they are not considered attached to the ground. Ve'en chacham modem lo, but the chacham disagree with that view. Ketzad, how so? Eser gefanim tunos masarti l'cho. If Shimon says, I gave to you, Ruvain, 10 grapevines that were laden with geshmake grapes, Vala Omer Einonella ki chomish, and Reuven says, do you mean 5 grapevines? Reb Meir Mechayev Shevuos, Reb Meir is going to be Mechayev Reuven to swear because of Modeh b'miktzas. The Chacham Om Kol Mechuv l'karka. Karka was the Chacham say that no, nisht, if it's attached to the ground, it's considered like ground. And we don't, as we said earlier, we don't swear on karkois. Okay. Ge val dig. Okay. Cool. And we've seen that before. It's going to come up in the Gemara, but we've seen it before. We only swear about things that are measurable, right? Things that you can measure, you can weigh, you can count, right? So for example, if we just take this example of the 10 vines, so you're counting, you're saying, right, 10 vines, 5 vines, right? Or if you say, I don't know, a core of grain, you could say half a core of grain, right? Things that are measurable, things that are countable, things that are weighable. Okay, it's that also. So if you say bayis mole masarti l'cho, v'kis mole masarti l'cho, v'halo me'eno eni odea, el ma she'enachto ato notel, potter, right? So for example, if, I don't know, Shimon says to Ruvain, I guess, I left you a house that was, I guess, full of stuff, I guess. That's not like, how do you measure full of stuff? And then Ruvain says, and then like, when Shimon goes to pick it up, the house is empty. He's like, hey, where's all my stuff? He's like, Ruvain's like, I don't know, just whatever's here, take it. So that would not be Modeh b'miktzas, right? I mean, even though Shimon's claiming a full house and he's just saying, here's like, just take the house without whatever's in it. I don't know what happened to the stuff in it. So then that would not be considered Modeh b'miktzas. And I guess the same thing counts as like a full wallet or something. So potter. But if Shimon says it was filled up to the jut, and Reuven says it was filled up, no, it was only filled up to the window or something. So then, well, that's already measurable. You could see the jut, you could see the window. Okay, I hope I understood that correctly. Okay. Now, zogt de Gemara, tashlume kefel menon. So how do we know that kefel does not apply to avodim, karkois, shtoris, and hekdeshis? So tashlume kefel menon, how do we know this? Titanu rabbonin, because the rabbis taught al kol dvar pesha, that the pasuk says. What does the pasuk say? Al kol dvar. I'm reading the pasuk. Al kol dvar pesha. That's a klal. Al shor, al chomer, al seh, al salma, prats. Al kol aveda, another klal. Asher yomer kiuzeh. So here's a pasuk about kefel, and what does it say in the pasuk? I'm reading the Gemara now. I'll call dvar pesha, and any kind of pesha, klal. Al shor, val chomer, val seh, val salma, prat. I'll call laveda, chozu v'cholo. Klal ufradu klal. Yatadon elake in a prat. So as we know, Chaver, do we need another refresher? Or are you still refreshed from the previous? Well, we had the refresher 2 times ago already. Then we did a proper refresher. But then it happened again, and I was hoping to extend the initial refresh, and I guess I'm hoping to extend it again. It's like those little huts by Eruvin, by Eruve Truman or something like that. That they would have like this little hut and extended the Trum. Wow, we went to Erev a really long time ago. So, right, so basically when you have a klal ufrad uchlal, so where you end up is that so kefel in this case will apply to everything similar to the prat. Okay, what's similar about the prats? About shor, chamor, seh, salma. Yeah, this is another kind of prat. Ma prat meforosh davar mitalta v'gufa mammon. Well, the prat is something that is movable, right? You can move these things, sheep and oxes. And v'gufa mammon, they themselves are valuable. Afkol davar mitalta v'gufa mammon. So therefore, kefel applies to things that are movable and themselves are valuable. Yotzu karkoyesh mitaltlin, to the exclusion of land, because land is not movable. Yotzu avodim shukshul karkos, to the exclusion of avodim because they are compared to karkos. V'nisnachaltem osem v'nechem achreichem. I think that's the pasuk that is used to compare them. Yotzu shtorish avubishein mitaltlin and gufun mammon, as well as to the exclusion of documents, because even though they are movable, they themselves are not valuable. They could be traded in for value, but they themselves aren't valuable. So therefore, they are also excluded from kefel. Hektish re'eu ksiv. When it comes to hektish, because by the pasuk of kefel says re'eu, right? It says yisham shnaim re'eu. And to your colleague, to your friend, not to hektish. Okay. V'lo tashlume arba v'chamisha. Also, there's no arba v'chamisha. My time it. Well, tashlume arba v'chamisha amar achmana v'lo tashlume shlosha v'arba, because arba v'chamisha includes kefel. But we just said that these items are excluded from kefel. So if you're getting rid of one of them, so it's no longer 4 or 5, it's now 3 or 4. But that 3 or 4 isn't a thing, so therefore, okay. Maybe arba v'chamisha. I asked before, how could arba v'chamisha apply to anything? Maybe it would apply to hektish, like if you're maktish like a shor or a set. Maybe that is where it would apply. Okay. But we're saying that it doesn't apply because since there's no kefel, so then you wouldn't have 4 and 5 anymore. You'd only have 3 and 4, but 3 and 4 is not a thing, right? What is it supposed to say? Arba. What is it? Arba shor tachas ashor v'chamisha set tachas aser or something. So it's 4 or 5 in the pasuk. It doesn't say anything about 3 or 4. Okay. Shomer chinam eino nishba. Similarly, we said a shomer chinam will not swear about these things. How do we know this? The Tanur Rabbanan that we learned in the Brayso, it says by shomer chinam, ki yiten ish are'eyu klal kesef okelim prat lishmor chazer v'cholal klal ufrad uchlal yat adon ele ke'ein haprat ma prat meforish davar metalta v'gufo mamon havkol davar metalta v'gufo mamon yotzu karkos she'ein metaltlin yotzu avodim she'ukshu l'karkos yotzu shtarish shafal pisha metaltlin ein gufon mamon hektish re'eu ksiv. Literally the same exact template that we used for kefel, we used it now for shomer chinam, to say that the shomer chinam doesn't swear about it, because also we used the same klal ufrad uklal that was also davar metalta v'gufo mamon, and we're going to see the same thing now by a shomer sacher as well. No, say sacher in a mishalim, a shomer sacher doesn't pay. Minala, and how do we know this? The Tanur Rabbanan says by a shomer sacher ki yiten isha re'eyu klal chomer oseh or shor oseh prat v'chol be'ema lishmor chazer v'cholal klal ufrad uklal ad hektish re'eyu ksiv, basically until the end of that whole limud. Klal ufrad uklal davar metalta v'gufo mamon, to exclusion of karkos and avodim and shtaros, and also it says re'eyu to the exclusion of hektish as well. So that is how we know all of those things. That's we know that shomer sacher does not apply. Right, the shomer sacher would have to pay. Does not apply to these items. Excuse me 1 second. Okay, moving on. Rav Meir Omer yesh devarim she'ein kikar k've'einon kikar k'chulei. Rav Meir says you can have some things that are like property or like land, but also not like land. Michlal. To Rav Meir Savar kol mechuber lekarka enu kikarka. So does that mean that Rav Meir holds that things that are connected to the ground are actually not considered like they're connected to the ground. But if Rameir is saying, so Rameir is saying, if what Rameir is saying is that things that are connected to the ground aren't actually considered connected to the ground, and that's why there could be modeh b'miktsas when it comes to these vines, these grapevines, right? What happens? Shimon says, Reuven, I gave you 10 grapevines full of grapes. And that's what Shimon says to Reuven. Reuven says, it's not 10, it's 5. So Meir says, okay, well, he has to swear. What do you mean? I thought it's karka. I thought we don't swear on karka. Well, we don't consider it to be karka. Oh, we don't. So does that mean that Meir is saying that things that are connected to the ground are actually not considered like they're connected to the ground? But if that's what he's saying, that simply things that are connected to the ground are not actually considered like they're connected to the ground, well then why does it matter that the grapevines were laden with grapes, even if they were empty? What difference does it make? They're not considered connected to the ground. Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina says, Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, Acha ba'anovim omdis li botzer kamiflige der meir savar kibitzuris damyon. We've seen this a few times, this discussion. I see it's quoting from Baba Metzia, Sanhedrin, Gittin, is that these vines are ready to be harvested. The grapes are mamish, they're ready for Donnie Friedenberg to come and make it into delicious wine. So Reb Meir considers it that since the grapes are ready to be harvested, it's like they are harvested, and therefore they're considered disconnected from the ground, and therefore it's like they've already been harvested. So therefore that is why you're chayiv for modeh b'miktsas when it comes to these vines. It is not considered like they have been harvested, and therefore they're still considered karka, and therefore there's no shvua, there's no swear. We only swear about measurable things. Abai says, Abai lo shanu ela do amar le bayis stam, aval amar le bayis zeh male yediyah tanosi. Okay, so Abai says that when we're talking about, if Shimon says, hey, I gave you a full house, and Reuben's giving him back an empty house, so that's not considered measurable, and therefore it's excluded from a shvuah of modeh b'miktsas. But says Abai that's only if it doesn't say this house. If it says this house, well then it can be considered specific and measurable, I guess. Rava says to Abai, if that's the case, Adatoni Seifa, Zeomer Araziz, Zeomer Acholon. Well, if that's the case, Abai, that there's a distinction between Bayis Stam and Bayis Zeh. Well, in the Seifa of the Mishnah, we are going in and we make distinctions, and we say, well, by the way, if you say to the jut versus to the window, that's considered measurable. Well, then we should also say, and if you say Zeh, then it's also you'd be chayiv for that. Like, why exclude that? Right? So again, so Omer le Rava says to Abai, if that's the case, Adutani Seifa, Zeomer Araziz, Zeomer Acholon, Chayav, Liflog Lesem Bedida also teach Bamed Bamurim Bevayis Male. And when do we say Potter? Only if it's when you simply say Bevayis Male, Aval Bevayis Zeh Male, Chayav. But if you say Bevayis Zeh Male, then you'd be Chayav. But the Mishnah doesn't say that. So Ella Omer Rava, L'olam Eino Chayav. Aishitanenu B'davar Sheb Midav Sheb Mishkov Sheb Minyan. Rather, says Rava, no. In order to be chayiv, it has to be something that's measurable. Shimon claims something that's measurable, and Reuven admits or denies something that is measurable. This won't do it. Tani Kavasi the Rava, we talk about Brisa supporting Rava. Kor tvua li biyadcho v'al omer ein li biyadi, ein l'cha biyadi potter. If Shimon says to Reuven, hey, you need to give me a core of grain. That's like a measurement of grain. And Reuven says, no, I don't. So he's potter. Menorah gedola yeshli biyadcha. If Shimon says, I have a big candelabra by you, ein l'cha biyadi ela menorah katana. And Reuven says, I only have a small candelabra. Potter. Reuven's potter because it's meaning, right. When do we say modeh b'miktsas? $100, and he says, no, it's not $100, it's $50, right? A core of wheat, he says, no, it's not a core, it's half a core of wheat. Kilu, when he's denying / admitting to a portion of a larger amount, right? It's not $100, it's $50. It's not this amount of grain, it's a lesser amount of grain. But here, it's a completely different item, right? If Shimon's saying a big candelabra, and Reuben's saying, I got a small candelabra, it's obviously a different item. It's not a part of the larger candelabra, it's an entirely different candelabra. Therefore, Reuben is potter. Azura, Gidola, Yeshli biyodcha. Shimon says, I lent you a big belt. In Chabiyod Azura Katana, potter. And Reuven says, big belt? Nah, I got a little belt. Also potter, because it's a different item. It's not like, he's not saying, I have part of your big belt. He's saying, no, I have a different thing, a little belt. Aval omer lo kortvua yeshli biyodcha, vala omer in Chabiyodi el lesech. But if Shimon says, hey, give me, you owe me a core of grain, right? That's what Shimon says, and Reuben says, I only owe you a half a core of grain. Well, that's a subset of the larger claim, and therefore he's chayiv. It's modeh b'miktzas. Menorah bas eser litrin yeshli biyodcha in chabiyod ela bas chomish litrin. If Shimon says, Reuven, give me back my candelabra that weighs 10 litras, let's say like 10 grams, let's say. So it'll probably be more than that, but let's just say 10 grams. And Reuven says, no, it weighs 5 grams. Yeah, I have a candelabra that weighs 5 grams, so chayiv. Be chayiv for modeh b'miktzas. We'll have to explain why in a second. Klal shel davar, the general rule is, le'olam eino chayiv ad shitanenu b'davar sheb midav sheb mishkol sheb minyan. That the rule is that he's only chayiv if he claims, if Shimon claims something that is measurable, and Reuven is admitting / denying something that is also measurable. When we're saying the general rule, what is coming to be included in the general rule, right? The general rule is that it has to be measurable. Is it not coming to include, when we say that it must be measurable, what's something that, right? Meaning, Eino chayev, what are you not going to be chayev for? Ba'izeh, you are not chayev for. It's something that is not considered measurable. Now, frag the Gemara, Umay shna menorah gedola umenorah katana. Now, how come when it comes to when Shimon says, Reuven, you owe me a large candelabra, and Reuven says, no, I got a small candelabra. So we say that Reuven is potter, because mashatanu lohodalo, because they're talking about different things, right? Shimon saying, hey, I want a large candelabra, and Reuven saying, I don't have your large candelabra. I have a small candelabra, but it's a different item that's not modeh b'miktzas. Well, if that's the case, bas eser bas chomesh nami mashtanu lohodelo umashodelo lotanu. I don't understand though, because we said that if Shimon says, give me my menorah that weighs 10 grams or 10 litras, and Reuven says, I have a menorah here that weighs 5 liters, we say chayiv, but I mean, those sound to me like different menorahs. Why would he be chayiv? So I'm Rabbi Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, acha b'menorah shel cholios askinan, says Rabbi Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, well, here we're talking about a menorah that is made of, pieces that you build. The kamodale mine, that basically, Shimon is saying, hey, give me the whole menorah, and Reuben saying, well, I only have half of the pieces. So therefore he's chayiv from modeh b'miktzas. Yochi azuranami nisnei v'lokmi b'delayfe. But then can't we say the same thing about the belt, right? We said that if Shimon claims a large belt and Reuven says I have a small belt, Reuven's potter. But can we just say it's talking about little, pieces of belts that you sewed together, and therefore you should be chayiv? So ela delaife lo katani, rather it doesn't say anything about stitching them together in pieces of a belt. So achnami b'shel cholius lo katani. Therefore, also we're not talking about pieces of menorah here that you build. Selam rava bar mamel ela amar abba bar mamel shiny menorah hoyil v'yochel legorav la'amida al chomesh litrin. Well, a menorah is different because you can drag it on the shave it down. A menorah that's 10 grams, you can shave it down to be 5 grams. So it could be the same exact menorah that you've shaved down. Okay? Sounds like fun. Okay, Chevra, we are going to stop here. A lighter daf today. We did a Mishnah, from one Mishnah to the next Mishnah. The next Mishnah is going to literally be from Bava Metzia. It's going to be another, kind of Bava Metzia kind of daf. But tomorrow we're going to finish the sixth parak of Masechta Shevuos. So hope you enjoy. Peace out.